So I totally messed up the intro here.
What was that? That was like we're back on Blog Talk.
Wait. All right, so now I got it right. That's about
There you
time.
go.
So that's Seth Kamens. I'm Sean Palmer, Seth and Sean Sports. You see, I got it right the first time here. It must be the early morning edition here. It's 7:30 in the morning in Anchorage, Alaska.
That's it?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like 5:30. It's only a 4-hour time difference?
+4, my friend, +4. So
it's not too bad.
It's not horrible. It's a little bit more than Arizona, which is what I do all the time. So welcome back to the show, everybody. A little midday sports for y'all here at Seth and Sean Sports. You can find Seth at S Kamens, myself at SU Lawyer 2001 on Twitter. We have Facebook. We have all the things, right?
Do we even post on Twitter?
We do every once in a while.
Every once in a blue moon.
Every once in a blue moon. But so you can see that's below, and you can find us on Facebook as well. I am here in Anchorage, Alaska. Seth is in New Jersey. I mean, it's true. It's accurate. And we're here for an hour talking sports because we do that from whatever continent I'm on and whatever state I'm in. So we did
as opposed to the same boring house that I'm in.
So just to give a little preview here, let's back it up. So on the 8th, we're going to do our NFL preview of September since opening night is on the 10th. On the 9th. So we'll do the NFL on the 8th, which will be Rosh Hashanah. So we'll be doing a show on Rosh Hashanah maybe. We'll see if that works. We'll see if the families allow both of us to do that. On the 1st will be our fantasy football preview. On the 25th will be our college football preview. And
which you will have. I'm sure you have an enormous amount of opinions on.
I do have opinions. Whether it's on this season or going forward is a whole different story, but I definitely do have opinions.
The 15th, I may not be able to work on the 15th, not because of Rosh Hashanah, but because that's corporate deadline day.
We're not talking the 15th. I said the 8th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the 8th of September is our NFL preview. The 1st of September is our fantasy football preview. The 25th of August is our college football preview, and next week we'll figure that part out. But that's just a backtrack. But Seth, let's start talking about football. And I don't mean football with the pigskin. I mean football.
We're talking about football?
Football. So football. Football. So football, which I have absolutely no idea what's going on. All I know is that Lionel Messi is gone. And tell us why. Like, I have no idea why the best player of our generation, the Michael Jordan, if you will, of football right now in Europe, is leaving. Like, I don't get it. Is it COVID related? Is it money?
Yeah, to a degree. What happened was Barcelona has $1 zillion of debt. And based upon the issues with COVID, and among other things, there's a salary structure, and they're having almost a hard cap, for lack of a better term. The hard cap is enormous.
Is that an internal cap, or is that an actual?
No, this is outside.
Wow. Soccer's finally going to, we're not going to pay $1 billion.
Yeah, you can't have more than $397 million in wages. I actually think that
pounds or dollars. Is that pounds or dollars?
Probably pounds.
Pounds. So $450 million salary cap.
And whatever the number is.
Yeah.
Barcelona could not. They'd agreed on terms for a contract for a 5-year deal, I believe, which would have brought Messi to retirement, or at least for a couple years, and then he would have transitioned to like MLS or something like that. And what happened was just like anything else, when the salary cap went down, they had too many wages under they couldn't afford it. They couldn't fit it. So they were kind of stuck, and it was weird because both sides had agreed to this. I don't know how they didn't realize this prior, and so he was forced to leave. I mean, he's going to get, I think, a $25 million bonus and $25 million a year for 2 years in Paris, playing with two of the 5 best players in the world. So no one's really crying for him, but it is a shame when you have a guy who's been there. It's kind of like when Peyton Manning left. He kind of had to go when he left Indianapolis to go to Denver. He kind of had to go, but neither side was particularly happy about it, and no one really was rooting for it.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So first of all, you don't think Messi's happy about leaving?
No, I think Messi wanted to stay.
Okay.
I think he's happy where that he ended up in a place where he's comfortable.
Right.
He wasn't traded. He wasn't like but if you played for someone for 18 years, 20 years, to leave in your last 2 or 3 years, it's not like he needs the money at this point.
No, it is humorous when you hear players, and I'll bring up Seth's favorite basketball player, Patrick Ewing, coming and talking about the acrimony that happened at the end of his career, where he said, look, I wanted to leave at that point because I was mad. Like, I was really mad at the whole contract situation and how that was working out. And the Knicks were mad because they didn't want to pay me what I thought I was earning, what I should have earned. However, in retrospect, it was a huge mistake. And I should have stayed a Knick. I should have retired a Knick. And that should have just been the end of it. And it's interesting to reflect back on those players who did leave, like the Joe Namaths, the Johnny Unitas's, and whether, in retrospect, obviously Patrick Ewing has a different opinion. Maybe others have differing minds, but whether it was the right thing to leave. And I'd be interested to hear whether Messi later on regrets this move.
No, I don't think. Here, I'm actually going to read this from the Sporting News. Both
Sporting News still exists?
Still exists.
Okay.
Both sides had agreed to a deal. Messi was prepared to take a 50% reduction in salary to make it happen, but league regulations made it an impossibility. Under La Liga rules, which were introduced in 2013, there's a floating salary cap for all teams, which limits player wages and acquisition costs to 70% of club revenues.
Okay.
In order to meet that requirement, after a drastic reduction of revenues due to COVID, Barcelona had to shed over $200 million in salaries to sign him. But the limited transfer activity across Europe meant that they were nowhere near that figure. And on August 5th, both sides came to the conclusion that it couldn't happen.
Yeah. So it really was a hard cap. I mean, yeah. But it's a floating cap, right? So unlike the NBA and NHL, who decided collective bargaining, this will be the cap, and we're gonna keep it stagnant for a couple of years so revenues can catch up. It doesn't sound like La Liga was in that boat. They were saying, look, the revenues went down, cap goes down. Revenue goes up, cap goes up.
Well, the funny part was a couple days later, the day before, a private equity firm contributed $2.7 billion to La Liga in return for like 10% or 15% of equity of ownership of the league. And they thought that may actually get this through. But I'm just reading this because Barcelona received $300 million, but only 15% was allowed to be used for player signings. So they were still under the limit.
So this La Liga cap, which I'm all in favor of a salary cap when it comes to some of these teams, especially in soccer where the money is just off the charts. Yeah. Is that only for La Liga or is that EPL?
Only for La Liga. It's only for La Liga. And you're seeing this with Man City, who just spent $100 million to sign Jack Grealish, which is the biggest British signing of all time. And they've put out another 100 to 150 to try and sign Harry Kane, which would be the new biggest British signing of all time. While every other team is trying to maintain financial
stability,
they're owned by some of the sheiks in Qatar and are spending exorbitantly. And one of the interesting things I was reading about last night, Jack Grealish is one of the young stars in the English league and around the world. The team that owned him, which was his boyhood team, had no problem selling them because there was $100 million. It was $100 million. What do you call it? A release is if you're offered $100 million, the contract is released and he's allowed to leave.
Okay.
There were 3 teams. Now the funny part is it's not. No one knows this. No one knew this was part of the contract, so they didn't have to release him until they offered $100 million.
Okay.
But they apparently Aston Villa did not want to release him, not because they didn't want him to go, which they didn't want him to go, but because they didn't want to release him to Man City because they're spending so exorbitantly that it's just it may make the EPL a joke next year.
So basically, they wanted somebody else to come up with the same $100 million so they could give it.
They would have much preferred it go somewhere else.
Right. It's funny. This is like the Yankees, right? I mean, way back when, not today, right? But sometimes the money doesn't necessarily buy the championship. We've seen that in numerous sports, right? I mean, the Dream Team, and I'll call Vince Young's version of the Dream Team with the Eagles when they signed Nasir. I can't pronounce the guy's last name.
You talking about someone?
Yeah, the cornerback. Cornerback. Kerry Washington's husband. That's the way I view it. But they did that, right? The Mets had the greatest team that didn't win, right? With Brett Saberhagen and Vince Coleman and signing the bleach incident and all that, Bobby Bonilla. And sometimes money doesn't win. Now, I don't know if that's going to be true with Man City. You know this much better than I. Is this so overwhelmingly like they have both starters and backups that their backups could probably start on any other team?
Oh yeah. I mean, they won the Premier League by 10 points last year. They lost in the finals of the Champions League.
But they lost. That's the point.
1-0. Yeah, they lost 1-0 to Chelsea in the Champions League final.
Okay.
And now they brought in 2 of the 10 best players, or one of the 5 to 10 best players in the league, and are potentially going to bring in another one of the 5 to 10 best players in the league. I mean, they're the overwhelming favorite to win. The only reason they're not the favorite, they may not be the favorite to win the Champions League, is because Paris signed Messi, and that gives you a starting 3 or forward line of Neymar, who's one of the 5 best players in the world, Messi, who's still probably one of the 5 to 10 best players in the world, and Mbappe, who's the best young player in the world, who's won a World Cup with France. And, I mean, it's theater of the absurd. You have 4 or 5 teams that can really run for the Champions League. Everything else is kind of a sham.
So with so how does this work when EPL, soccer is a lot different than baseball, basketball. And it spans countries, right? I mean,
yes.
Man U's going to play Real Madrid at some point, right?
You have a domestic league,
right,
and then you have a European league,
right?
So you have to qualify for the European league,
right? So in the European league, while La Liga teams are all under the salary cap, you're playing against teams that are not under said salary cap, right? So it's like AAA playing against the Major League Baseball and stuff.
Well, there are what's called financial fair play restrictions. We talked about this a while ago.
Right, we tried talking about it.
Right,
yeah,
it's a hard concept for all of us. But realistically, you have 3 or 4 teams that can just spend and spend and spend and spend, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that's Man City, Paris Saint-Germain, Chelsea, although they don't spend to the same degree, but Roman Abramovich is a multi-billionaire from Russia. And they have unlimited funds. And if you have unlimited funds, you can do this.
Well, it used to be Manchester United, right? I mean, they were in
Manchester United was the premier team. And they were one of the high-end people, but they were never to the degree of this. This is hysterical, for lack of a better term. I mean, the most they've ever spent, I believe, on a transfer is about $80 million. And France, I mean, all these other teams are spending 100, Real Madrid spent $175 million, or I forget, it was that Barcelona, on a guy named Philippe Coutinho, who 2 years later is no longer playing for the team.
But Real Madrid's in La Liga, right? So
yes.
So at least if they want to spend the 175, go for it. But there are repercussions to spend.
Yes. Yeah, there are no repercussions in the UK or
Right.
in
So,
France, to the best of my knowledge.
so tell me a little bit about the rest of the team that Messi's joining. So they
Well,
are the premier team in Paris, I would think, right?
they've won the French league 5 out of 6 years, 4 out of 5 years. They just signed the best goalie in the world for $72 million. They let one or two defensive guys go. I forget who. They brought in a couple world class midfielders, and they have this front. It's a dream team.
So in the words of Larry Lucchino, they are the evil empire.
Yeah,
And there are evil empires in what? England, France, Spain.
there's always been, but that's why they tried to put together the Super League to have
Right,
all the evil empires play each other.
right.
But luckily, that kind of fell down the shitter. Pardon my French. And yeah, you've always had look for every Real Madrid, for every Man City, Chelsea, Man U, you have Leicester, who won the title 4 years ago and won the FA Cup last year.
Sure.
For PSG, you had Lille, who beat them in the French league last year. Um, look, most of the time, just like in not really in American sports, because the most highly spending teams is probably the wrong way to put it. But in baseball, the Yankees were spending forever, and how many championships in the last 15 years have they won? The Dodgers have been spending for the last 10 years. They've won one title. Um, Basketball, I mean, look, Golden State overpaid to keep their guys, but there's still some version of a cap. The Nets spend more than anyone else last year. They didn't win. Lakers spent an enormous amount. They didn't win.
Look, but basketball is a lot easier to understand, right? So one guy matters a lot more in basketball than pretty much any other sport. I mean, you take LeBron James off the court, the impact of him is probably more than Lionel Messi off the field in the soccer game. He just
Sure.
impacts the game more. So I think putting the amount of money that's being spent on a basketball team is just disproportionate for the people that are on the court as opposed to the backups that they have or even the other players. I mean, everybody in the Nets starting five was earning over $12 million last year. The backups
Yeah.
just weren't earning anything.
Well,
I mean,
I think DeAndre was only earning 10. I'm not
okay.
sure earning is quite the right word with DeAndre Jordan.
Well, how about being the Jack Haley of the Brooklyn Nets? I think
Oh,
it's about,
yeah, that works. It's like being the Brittany Renner. If you want to look up the PJ Washington, you may want to Google that.
I don't even know what Brittany Renner is.
You will once you Google PJ Washington.
All right, I will. At the conclusion of the show, I do not want my face to do anything on camera that might go the other way. But
Yeah.
that being said, okay, so soccer, we have now spent 18 minutes on soccer, which is 18 more minutes than I think we have spent in the last 365 days, or close to.
No, I wouldn't say that. We probably spent some in the Champions League, and we since spent some. Yeah.
By the way,
probably.
who won the soccer in the Olympics? Because I've Brazil. Okay.
Brazil beat Spain in the men's, and Canada beat Sweden in a shootout in the women's.
Right, and the U.S. lost to Canada.
Yeah.
And did they win the bronze?
They did.
Okay. Did you pay any attention to the soccer while it was on in the Olympics?
I did see the shootout in the finals of the women's. I saw the last half hour because I was home and I had it on. When I'm watching the Olympics, I'm watching more of the swimming and the track and field and the handball and the water polo and stuff like that. I'm not watching the sports that I watch normally.
So, what was your takeaway from the Olympics itself? Like the Olympics is now over, right? I mean,
I think so. Although it's still apparently on my YouTube TV. I'm not sure why.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? So your point of "I think so" is my takeaway is that when somebody asked me the other day, "Is the Olympics still going on?" I was like, I had to not look it up, but say, "All right, let's count the weekends." Yep, last weekend was the last weekend of the Olympics.
I watched a lot of it. So look, you have a 13-hour discrepancy and you have no fans. It's not the same. But you still have the amazing stories. You have the two high jumpers who tied, which was awesome. You had that 400 hurdles race between the Norwegian who broke 40, like the guy from the U.S. Washington who ran 0.6 of a second under the world record and lost. You have great stories in the Olympics. You have a Filipino who won their first gold medal. You have a Malaysian who won the first gold medal. You have an Israeli who won a gymnastics gold medal. I mean, you have Australia killing it in the swimming. You have Great Britain doing phenomenally well. It was not a bad Olympics at all. What happens is it wasn't a U.S.-centric Olympics. The U.S. still won the most medals. They still won the most gold. But the better part of the Olympics is not that U.S. wins everything. It's that you have great stories, and that you still had. It's just the problem is when you're watching NBC, all you see is the U.S. stuff.
So, right. And you're seeing it on tape delay most of it.
Yes, that is what it is.
And by the way, we're going to get that in the winter this year as well, as the winter is in Beijing. So we're just going to get another 12-hour time zone discrepancy. I think it's 11 or I think it's 11.
Whatever it is. It's a pain in the ass.
It's night and day, literally night and day, and that's the issue is that everything's going to go on in the morning, and you and I are going to be watching hockey at 8:00 in the morning, U.S. versus Russia again. Which I don't really mind if it's on a Saturday, but during the week would be kind of hard.
No, do you remember the last time we watched U.S. and Russia together?
Yeah, I'm saying that was TJ Oshie.
You're right. That was 3 days after I asked out my wife for the first time.
That was Sochi. That was Sochi's Olympics. Yeah. And then in 2024, it's in Paris, and then 2028 is in LA.
Los Angeles. And then 2032 is in Brisbane.
You know what? 2028 might be our guys' trip with Jake. We'll go to the Olympics.
I've never been, so I'd like to.
7 years? Jake will be able to do it in 7 years. He'll be 12.
Yeah, the question is Carly going to want to come?
Okay. We're not going there. We got 8 years to plan this.
7. We may have to start soon.
7 years to plan this. But
I heard flights are cheap right now.
Yeah.
Especially if you're taking Spirit Airlines.
I was just going to say, especially if it's on Spirit Airlines. So as I wrote on my travel blog this morning, ladies and gentlemen, somebody in this hotel, when I told them about Spirit Airlines, had the quote of the week. Everybody flies Spirit once, and then they never fly him again. That's all and I didn't even get the Spirit for them. I didn't. That is awful, dude. Yeah. That is just, and I didn't even get to fly him once, so I'm perfectly fine. I just want my refund. Thank you to Delta Airlines for bailing me out. But I really liked with regards to the Olympics. As you said, it is less U.S. centric, and I think with the advent of the internet and more ability to watch different things, especially with Twitter and Instagram, you are able to get into those stories more than you used to be able to get into them, because it used to be only NBC. That was it. That's all you had. So now you have that ability. I love the swimming. I did. I love the Canadian decathlon. I think it was the decathlon guy, right? 5,000 points, and didn't even. Did you watch the gold medal basketball game at all?
I did. We were home. It was 10:30 on a Friday night. I'm home. Our friend Fetty, who you know, was in from Boston, and we were all drinking a beer and watching the game. Carly fell asleep. Fetty fell asleep. I watched the end of it.
And I fell asleep too.
I would expect so. It's about 3 hours past your bedtime.
I did not stay awake for the end of the game. Not surprising that they won.
No.
Especially since they lost to France in the prelims. I thought that there was something that was definitely going to be like a chip on the shoulder. Not surprised that they won. I did see numerous posts all over, and I think this is to the point we were trying to make about soccer, is that the U.S. won the gold medal without its probably 10 to 15 best players. And that just proves that the U.S. superiority in basketball. I think that's crap. I think that, yes, you're better. Yes, you're absolutely better. But the 5 best players on the team are not necessarily going to win. Super teams have lost before. You put the 5 best players on the court right now in the NBA. Again, there's only one ball. I think the way that the U.S. won, and I think the way that teams win, are with guys like Draymond Green, right? Guys that don't necessarily shoot. Guys like Bruce Bowen, which is why I told you it was so important for them to re-sign a guy like Bruce Bowen.
How about Bruce Brown?
Bruce Brown, there you go. Bruce Bowen, sorry.
Played for the Spurs 20 years ago.
And just as important, by the way.
He was.
For that team.
We talked about, like, there was the point guard, ironically, that the U.S. probably needed, someone like Lonzo Ball, who passes the ball, plays defense, and can shoot an occasional 3.
Yeah.
And, you have literally a reiteration of the same players over and over again. Lillard is fantastic. Beal is fantastic. Tatum is fantastic. But there's only one ball, as you said. You don't have, and when you play for these teams, when you play for these countries, Evan Fournier turned into a $200 million player playing for France, and is a $40 million playing in the NBA. The problem is the Knicks signed him for $76 million. Ricky Rubio is always been a $100 million player playing for Spain. $15 million player playing in the NBA. They played with their national teams for so long, and it's there's such a more of a collaborative, that they've been able to be really competitive. And Australia was competitive, and Slovenia was competitive, and France was very competitive. Now, was this the best U.S. team you had? No. There's no Curry, there's no James, there's no Anthony Davis, there's no James Harden. I don't know who would the center be? I mean, when JaVale McGee is you're looking at, who is your center? Actually, who would be the Nets center? Who would be the U.S. center?
It's DeAndre Jordan, right? It's always.
He was 4 years ago. Adebayo makes sense. Embiid is in the U.S.
Embiid's from Cameroon.
Cameroon, I think.
So
it's not Jokic. It's not Gobert. Adebayo and Brook Lopez?
Yeah, or Julius Randle if you're playing him at the 5.
Yeah, you can't play him in the 5 in the international. I don't think. But think about it. Lopez is a good defender, can shoot the 3. Kind of fits the need.
Look, Draymond Green played small ball 5. That's what he does, right? And you need players like that on championship teams the same way you need them on Olympic teams. And as you said before, the team didn't come together until Drew Holiday came aboard, who was the best point guard they had, and may have been the best player outside of Kevin Durant that they had, because he did everything that they needed, not everything that they didn't need him to score, and he didn't. No. And like you said, Lonzo Ball, Jason Kidd, these types of pass first.
Chris Paul, even though Chris Paul can score, Chris Paul knew his position when he was playing on the Olympic teams.
Yeah. And now it's funny, all those players have moved on to different teams in this offseason. And look, we have to recap where everybody went at some point because it really looks like, and there's still more movement. And last night I get a text about Dennis Schroeder going to the Celtics at $5.9 million, which is a savvy pickup by Brad Stevens. Not sure it does anything different than what they had last year anyway, because Schroeder can't shoot any more than Kemba Walker could. Doesn't really help the spacing anymore. But
no, but if you can get that kind of player for $6 million,
you do it in a heartbeat. Let's talk about the Lakers. So the Lakers. So there was an interesting post the other day that I saw that the Lakers acquired 6 players for the same price as the Knicks acquired Evan Fournier. And I will tell you, those 6 players, aside from Kendrick Nunn, who was probably in diapers 10 years ago, or at least in grade school, those guys would have been great 10 years ago. But I'm not sure the Trevor Arizas, the Ken Bazemores, the Carmelo Anthonys, I think they bring something to the table, but they're all backup players, right, Seth? None of these guys are moving the needle for you.
Not really. I mean, the one that moves the needle, and that's debatable whether it was the right move or not, is Westbrook. But that's a difficult team. It's a difficult team to figure out. I mean, look, they'll all have their value. Bazemore can come in. They can, they needed shooters. They brought in Carmelo. They needed energy. They brought in Ariza. But Ariza's 35, and not, you said Ariza's 35 years old. It's not a particularly athletic team, except for Westbrook, who's just a freak of nature. You know, Anthony Davis has been injured on and off. LeBron is still the best player in basketball, but he's not what he was 10 years ago. Not that anyone should be. You don't know what you're getting from, as you said, they brought in a lot of, we'll see. Still not a great defensive team. Still not a three-point shooting team you're overly comfortable with. They'll certainly be right up there, but I'm not willing to confirm them as the favorites going in.
No, and I wouldn't confirm them as the favorites going in or at all. I don't even think they're in the top three. But that's just me. And we'll get to our NBA preview sometime, I don't know, in September. I mean, we got a long way to go until we get to the NBA. So I know you hate talking about this because it's the middle of August. And as for the middle of August, it's always – look, the Mets always let me down, but they let me down in September. It seems like they are doing it early with another loss.
They're finding all sorts of ways to do this.
To Nationals. Seth, I'm in a free fall here. I mean, my baseball team is in a free fall. It is looking at – I mean, they went all in with – we did not get to talk in the last couple of weeks about the baseball deadline trades, which, wow. Kudos to the Cubs. Kudos to the Cubs. It is very hard to wave a white flag when you're in a big market. It's an incredibly hard thing to do. And the Cubs got rid of is a strong word. They traded Craig Kimbrell, Chris Bryant, and
Anthony Rizzo and Javier.
Anthony Rizzo. I forgot Rizzo and Javier Baez, and got back a good amount of young talent. From the Mets, they got Pete Crow Armstrong, who I just wanted him on the back of my jersey because that's a very, very – that's like Mafu Ala Ala, where it would just go around in the corner. And they got Nick Madrigal, who I know you have no idea who that is.
I remember the name, but I can't specifically.
Second base prospect from the White Sox. Okay. So they did an excellent job, Jed Hoyer did, in supplementing that farm system, which needed an infusion of talent. And as I said before, it's very hard to wave that white flag. And the Cubs did a great job. Your Yankees, wow, they have an offensive line in the outfield. That is one very, very large outfield with Judge, Gallo, and Stanton if they play them three across. I think Jason Stark said they are the heaviest outfield of all time and also the tallest outfield of all time. Good on that. Good on them. I mean, I'm not sure they have a chance of making the playoffs this year. Like
they're 2 games out.
They're 2 games out. I agree, but I don't like the pitching staff. I just don't see them being able to bash their way in. And the other thing is you're counting on injury-free outfield,
which you can't do.
But
look, their offense hasn't been great. They didn't see the pitching that they wanted. So they got Rizzo and they got Gallo. And Rizzo's been a game changer for them since he's come in. And Gallo's provided what you expected Gallo to provide.
Yeah, I mean, and they got Gallo for an extra year too. So Gallo is not a free agent after this year, which is a good pickup. And they didn't give up much for. They gave up a couple of good prospects.
They didn't give up their big. They didn't give up Louis Garcia. They didn't give up Jason Dominguez. They didn't give up their big ones.
Right, exactly. And you look at the AL East at this point. You got Tampa Bay, who's leading the division by 5 games over the Red Sox. The Red Sox then 2 games over the Yankees and 2.5 over the Blue Jays. Man, I mean, I called them the Devil Rays again. Always do that. The Rays have a plus 125 run differential, Seth. You know who else has a plus 124 run differential?
Mets.
The Blue Jays. They have the exacts. So they both have scored 578 runs. And they both, the Rays have given up 453, and the Blue Jays have given up 454, and they're 7 games behind, 7.5 games behind. It's just an interesting quandary.
I mean, look, Tampa's got all these teams have problems though. Tampa lost their ace.
Yeah.
Tyler Glass now is out till I think 2023 at this point. Boston has no pitching. We're getting Chris Sale back, but you don't really know what you're getting at this point. The Yankees have not had the pitching has not held up. And according to one of my office mates, Brent Boone should have been out, or Aaron Boone should have been out a year ago, and it hasn't. That chatter hasn't been mitigated. And Toronto is 1 or 2 players short.
Yeah,
Springer hasn't been great. Springer's been injured. I mean, it's a weird division. It's hard to read at this point.
And there's been no dominant team in the AL except for, Tampa Bay's played very well, 61% winning percentage. Chicago is 10.5 games above Cleveland. They are rocking it behind the Cleveland ahead of the Cleveland soon-to-be Guardians, which I still can't stand that name. That name makes sense.
It doesn't bother me. What did you want them to be? The Spiders?
I don't know. I would have been the Cleveland baseball team. Would have been better than the Guardians. But
you want to go back to 1903 and be the Cleveland Spiders?
Yes. Yes. I actually said I wanted the Spiders of the Naps. If you're going to go all the way back to the Nap LaJoys. Be the Cleveland Naps. Bring it back. But the Spiders would have been fine. And then Houston is up 2 games over the Athletics and 8 games over Seattle. And they have Houston has the best run differential. And
154.
It's interesting because nobody talks about Houston. Like, they're just there, right? I mean,
nobody's talking about baseball.
Except for the Mets collapse.
Well, because that's what the Daily News can talk about in the summer.
Sure.
But, think about it. We've gone from a really pretty interesting NBA Finals
and
NBA playoff.
And a longer NBA Finals, right?
Exactly,
so
which went further, which went deeper.
Well, I'm saying, like, the NHL and the NBA were into July this year. So,
yes. Which led right into the Olympics. And English Premier League, which, is not everybody's cup of tea, starts this week. But college football starts in 3 weeks and the NFL starts in 4 weeks. So baseball has not been able – look, baseball did it to themselves last year. They can't increase their fan base. They have no idea how to market themselves. And, people like me who are baseball fans, but not to a degree that you are, haven't watched an inning of it this year.
And I will tell you, I've lost a lot of the luster this year. I think it still comes from last year in my despisement of what went on. But I think you're right.
Despisement a word? Despisement. Did you learn that studying for the LSATs?
Yes. Let's say I did not take kindly to what the two sides did last year in delaying the game. I think everybody that watches this show knows that. I boycotted baseball last year, and I don't think it's returned this year to the same degree as it was before. I play fantasy football, but fantasy baseball, but I'm not following other than watching the Mets go down in flames. So I think that they lost a little bit more of that foothold last year, and you're right. They have not been able to get that foothold this year at all, even with the trading deadline, which was nuts for a baseball trading deadline. I think that there were 23 trades in total in a 24-hour period, which is ridiculous.
Not like the draft. It felt like the NBA draft where everything was just going haywire at the same time.
Right, exactly. And so here we are, like you said, 3 weeks to go until college football season and and NFL football season. Training camp just opened. Carson Wentz makes a miraculous comeback somehow from a surgery, and he's walking 8 days later. None of that has to do, by the way, with Sam Ettinger or Jacob Eason playing very well in training camp. None of it has to do with that. And
I actually really don't think it has anything to do with
it.
No. They just signed $30 million a year on Carson Wentz. They're not worried about a 4th-round pick from Washington and a 6th last year who couldn't beat out a 48-year-old Phillip Rivers or a 6th-round pick from Texas.
Okay.
Don't see it.
Okay. But they definitely have lost the foothold on the summer, at least this summer. I mean, baseball has to hope that next year is a routine summer. Also, they're just going to keep declining in popularity more than they already have. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Seth, where do you want to go from here? It is very, very early in the morning for me, and I am looking to see Evander Kane. We can talk about betting on hockey, which I know is another one of your lovely sports. So EPL is starting. What should we be looking for besides Man City in the EPL, or should we just forget about the season in general?
No, you got 6 teams, realistically 6 or 7 teams playing for 4 spots, because Man City is going to be the favorite going in. Then you have the Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United triumvirate who are going to try and knock them off. And look, Liverpool was right there. Won it 2 years ago, and last year their two best players, their best defensive player was injured all year, and that was it. Chelsea won the cup, won the Champions League last year. They're really, really good. And Man United brought in 2 studs, one from Real Madrid, one from Borussia Dortmund. And they'll be really good. So those are your 4. And then you have Leicester, who just is like the Tampa Bay Devil Rays of the EPL, except they've actually won a title, who just keeps moving along. And then you have really what's going to happen with Harry Kane at Tottenham. Like, that's the real question, because he's been there, he's requested to be transferred. Man City's willing to pay 100. Tottenham wants 150 million. He has 3 more years on his contract. So he has no leverage. We'll see how it plays out.
When is the due date? Like, look, there's a point. I've never heard of an in-season trade in the EPL. I'm sure it's
not a trade. It's not trade. It's transfers.
So there's a transfer period, right? So once that
there's
transfer period is over,
there's a summer one which I believe ends August 31st.
Okay.
And then there's a winter one which is around December 31st, give or take.
Which is in the middle of the season, right?
Yes. But typically, the summer one is typically the bigger one. A lot of times, if you're going, if someone's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and a team is not going to win or not going to be demoted, which to me is still the greatest thing in sports. You actually have demotions. I think it's fantastic. They may transfer him to someone who may want to may try and get a Champions League spot or a Europa League spot. But, they may walk away with $30-40 million or pounds or whatever it is.
Sure.
So, but the big trade-offs are typically in the summer, which we've seen this year. But, going into next year, you have Paul Pogba, who's at Man U and probably should leave and would have been at PSG if Messi hadn't gone there. You have a lot of people in their last year of contracts, and if they're not going to win a title, it may not be the worst thing in the world to unload them.
Okay,
try and get some money back.
So give me a prediction. First,
Kane.
What?
Kane.
First, is Harry Kane going to be a member of Tottenham as of September 1st?
No. At some point,
that is the second prediction, so you just nailed that.
No, I don't think so. He's not going to hold out because I don't think that's his personality.
Sure.
But it's going to ruin the team if they don't trade him at this point, because you don't want someone that unhappy there and going to be there. It's not like they have 6 months left and they have a realistic chance of winning the title, and you're keeping them and hoping for the best. He's 28 years old. You're going to get 9 figures for him plus 2 or 3 players. Make the damn deal and just be done with it and move on.
And that means my Tottenham jersey becomes less. Thanks.
No problem.
I appreciate the candor right there.
That's what I'm here for. I root for. It's one of the teams I root for. You know why? Because they're 2 reasons. Number one, they were the first team to really use Americans, which I'm not the most nationalistic guy in the world, but they brought in Dempsey and Eddie Johnson. I think was there for a little bit, and Carlos Bocanegra. Well, that was Fulham, but there were a couple people. Casey Cowher, I think, played for Tottenham for a little bit. And number two, their nickname is the Yids.
I know. That's why I have the jersey. That's why I was blocked. So, okay. So I got to drop off early. So I think we're going to end a little bit.
We'll call it that. We'll call it a
day. Do you have a last thought?
Google PJ Washington.
I'm going to go Google PJ Washington. My last thought is, for the love of God, Mets, by the time I get home, please win a game. I mean, I'll be home in a week. It has been – normally this is a stretch that happens the last 2 weeks in September. Now, I do understand that certainly helps in the fact that I don't get my hopes up in September if they just fail in August. But I'd prefer to have a September to remember. So here we are. So let's go Mets. And Google PJ Washington. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody. See ya. Bye-bye.